The first part, I just really want you to take a look at what your end product could or should look like. 5 jellyfish with these stars behind them illuminating them, a added campsite, a layer of grain, a levels where we're just playing with the blue channel, right? We're just messing with that blue channel, and a gradient map. Now, your gradient map could look a little bit different. I have simply sampled the images here in mine to kind of see what we can bring the image together with by adding one of these gradient maps. So we're going to start all together with a new letter-sized file. We're going to bring over our background composite. I'm going to stretch it out just enough to fill the space, and I'm going to make a duplicate layer and rasterize it. So next we need to play around with our jellyfish. So I'm going to bring over this guy, rotate him around, pick what kind of size I would like, and then I'm going to turn off these background layers so I can make my layer mask with all of this background visible. I need to put black as my foreground color, and I'm going to go to a medium hardness here just as I zoom around and get rid of these harsh edges. So I'm going to have nice space all around, and that looks pretty good. A little closer on this side, like so. Now I'm going to turn my background back on, and I'm just going to cycle through my blending modes until I find one I like. Lighten looks good. It's going to clear up a lot more of those black on black pixels. Screen, it's going to leave a little bit more. I personally like screen for this. You can do whatever you like. Now we're going to simply duplicate these layers, and I'm going to show you how to kind of make them look different, and then I'll zoom ahead to where I've got all of them going. So for this one, I'm going to edit, transform, and I'm going to flip him horizontal, and then come to edit, transform, and warp. I'm going to kind of zoom up. I need to rasterize this first. Transform and warp. I'm going to take it up right here from the center and kind of zoom him in so he looks like he's swimming along. See how we've really made 2 different jellyfish? And I want you to play around with different sizes and different positions. Don't worry about the being in front of the trees. We'll take care of that in a minute. But just really vary them, okay? So I've got one over here where I have done so. And I have simply taken all 5 of them and made a smart object. So convert to smart object. We need to do this so that we can group them and move them around with a layer masked background. Right, we're dropping them behind those trees. But don't worry, everything is editable. I can double click on this layer. It opens them up in a PSB file. I can move each one around individually, and everything is still completely editable. Okay, so we're just going to move forward to this one where we've got our jellyfish all together. Next, we need to drop them behind our tree layer. So we're going to turn off the jellyfish layer to make our selection. If we made our selection with the jellyfish layer, it would be edited right in here. We would see it reflected there. So we're coming back to our background composite, coming to color range. I'm just clicking on this background. Now check it out. We have this selection made. Pretty cool, right? But we need to turn our jellyfish back on, come to our jellyfish layer, before we make our layer mask. Now again, it's the inverse of what we want. Don't worry. You can always click on this layer here and hit Command I and it inverts the selection. So a lot of the same skills we've been looking at all semester long, but this one we get to see it kind of in real time, whereas before we would invert the selection before we made the layer mask. So just kind of a different way to go about it. Next, I'm going to hold Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC. Now we're seeing our layer mask in even a different way. Pretty cool, right? So what we can do now here is paint with white onto our layer. So I'm going to get my white brush and I'm just going to paint this sky out. Keep this modality in mind as it's a really great way to make edits to your layer mask while you are working in your file. So we can turn this on and off and we can see just an effective way of dropping those jellyfish behind our tree layer. Pretty sweet. All right, next we are going to duplicate our background copy and I'm going to hit Command J and I'm going to call this one Star Bloat. And what we're going to do here is use our liquify brush to bloat out these stars behind the jellyfish. Pretty cool. I'm going to go to Filter, Liquify. I'm going to drop down to my 6th option here, which is the bloat tool. Now I'm going to take my brush, I got my preview on, and I am just going to bloat out these stars around each one of the little jellyfish. You can easily go too far with this, so I would just give it a light hand, say okay, and we can turn this on and off to see that little bit of bloat. How fun is that? All right, next we are going to open up our star file. Again, we can bring it to the top and turn everything else off so we can really get a good look at it. And for this one, I'm really just going to take this center section. So I'm going to add a layer mask and with black as my foreground color, cover up everything that isn't this center star portion. Make my brush a little smaller, clean that up, and I'm kind of keeping the general shape of the jellyfish in mind. All right, now we can turn our layers back on and grab our jellyfish star illumination. So it's like we're giving each one of these jellyfish its own little galaxy. I'm gonna put it right in here, that kind of illuminated area. And let's cycle through our blending modes till we find one. Screen's gonna give us more color. Lighting's gonna give us more color. Screen's gonna give us more illumination. So I kind of like the way that screen looks. Pop it right in here. Hit enter. Bring my opacity down just a little bit, and we can continue to mask if we want to get it just in that lower area. Super, super cool, and we can do each one differently if we'd like. So I'm going to bring over this star, rinse and repeat. Transform. Let's pick another jellyfish to illuminate. This one up here. Maybe this one will put a whole bunch more. Make it much brighter. Bring it up all through the entire jellyfish. Take that back down to our screen. Now we're starting to see that each of them look a little bit different. So feel free to mix and match your blending modes throughout any of these. This one we can actually squeeze up a little bit. Command J, grab another one over here. Maybe this one will be way smaller. Just a little bit of illumination. And our last guy back here. So he's back off in the distance. So we might want to take our opacity down, maybe even quite a bit. So I'm gonna take my opacity down. He wouldn't have as much illumination. And maybe this one too. Maybe about 75 or so. Pretty cool, right? This looks awesome. Next, we need to bring our camp layer over. So I'm going to drag and drop camp in, hit enter, and let's mask out again a good portion of it. We have our black foreground trees, so we can really get rid of most of those. I do maybe want to keep a little bit of it. Let's drop our camp layer down. Make sure we have all of that mask cleaned off. Now it's up to you how big your camp is going to be. Maybe your camp's a little bigger. And maybe we can kind of line up our camp to see some of this foreground illumination, or maybe you want to bring it all into shade. It's up to you. It is your camp. You can design it however you think looks best. There you go. I'm going to make this camp a little bigger today. Next, we're going to play around with a hue and saturation layer and clip it to it so we can make it either warm or cool. So I'm going to pop over to my hue and saturation, and we can make it black and white. We can make it way warmer, warm it up, see how crazy we can take this. Let's go back and clip it to our campsite by holding Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and now we can really play around. We want a purple camp anywhere in there. I like this kind of yellowy area. It really plays off this glow in the background, but I think it might be too saturated and maybe too bright. So again, I'm going to just play around until I see it blend in. And turn that on and off, check it out. That looks pretty believable. Next, we're going to add a gradient map to kind of tone the whole scene. This is a huge way of making changes and adaptations to your image, also to bring some cohesiveness to it. So I'm going to pop to gradient map. Now I know it looks black and white. Don't worry, we're going to add our colors. So down here at the bottom with this little finger, you can add a stop and pick the color. So here I'm going to go and maybe pick a dark purpley blue. That's kind of pretty. Say okay. Let's add another stop and add that yellow that we were playing with from, here we go, it's kind of fun, that yellow. And then let's add maybe another teal kind of color. Ooh. Lots of brightness here, and we can play around. Maybe yellow goes almost all the way up and we don't have much of a white. Our teal can kind of play in this area. Maybe this blue comes all the way down. That's pretty sweet. And we can call this our jellyfish. We already have another jellyfish 2, and say new. I've made one earlier that looked like this. You guys can save these gradient maps, and then when you come back over, really play around with bringing the opacity down, but seeing how it brings all of the image together. It's a great way to apply a lot of change with just one adjustment layer. Next, we're going to blue this up a little bit because we want it to look like it's kind of a mix between fantasy and underwater. So I'm going to use a levels adjustment, but we're going to play around in our channels. So we haven't done this before. When you open it, you're going to probably want to move it around like this, and you're like, that doesn't do what it was supposed to do. But remember, if you click on RGB, we can find our blue channel, and this is where we can make some really fun changes. So we can bring our slider down, bring it back up. Ooh, again, turn it on and off, see what we can do here. We're really looking for color cohesion and believability. I've done this project so many times and it always looks different just based on preferences and kind of what we're into that day. Next, we're going to add some grain to the image. It's nice to add just a little bit of a texture again because we're in this kind of, unreal realm. In order to add grain to the whole image, we need to first start by making a new layer and adding about 50% gray to it. So I'm just picking right here in the middle a nice 50% gray. And then I am going to fill the entire area. I know, it looks crazy. But next we're going to go to filter, noise, add noise, and now we can add as much as we want. We could go absolutely crazy or add maybe about 25% grain and say okay. Of course we need to change our blending mode, and for this one, since it's going to be used like an overlay, overlay is probably our best bet, but you can play around anywhere in here. And between overlay and soft light, I think I like overlay the best. Green you're not going to see unless you zoom really far in to any area and turn it on and off. Really fun. And again, you can add as much or as little as you want. I think green really does add quite a bit to this image. So like I said, we've done so many different things here in terms of playing around with smart objects that are editable. Our bloat tool, turn that on and off and check out our